There you are. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Can you play that guitar in the background?
I've been known to jam a couple tunes.
Are you good?
I'm not a good guitar player, but I can play enough to sing. So
I can't do that. I can play a little bit, but I cannot sing along with it. And I don't think anyone can. I think they're singing going, what is this? I don't know what he's playing. I've been working at it for so long.
Oh, you have? So
Yeah, and it's something I can't.
Okay.
I cannot break it, but I have a feeling there's going to be something like that. I'll all of a sudden there will be a breakthrough.
I was gonna say, all you have is time. You can get better. So
It's true. It's true. It's like you with running. I read all about your running career, about how you just couldn't break through, and all of a sudden you figured it out.
yeah, and I just for me, I think it was about the focus of making everything about the running to see how far I could take it. Because
Right.
I dabbled in everything for so long, and I think my preference is actually to be the, all around athlete. So,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure we'll talk about, and CrossFit and jujitsu, all these different things that I love to do. And I just cut everything out on purpose to go after running to see how far I could take the marathon.
Was that hard for you to do?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, it took me years to really commit to saying, okay, all right, I'll stop the other stuff, or I'll back off enough of that stuff to really, pursue running. I mean, I always ran, but then I always did everything else as well. So it's a jack of all trades as an athlete. So
I'm not an athlete, but I have a lot of hobbies, and I've got a career in stand up, and I do. I always say I'm well balanced, and I sometimes I wonder if that's an excuse. If I use that as an excuse because I don't get into something so obsessively, because people that are great are absolutely obsessed with what they do.
100%. Yeah. And it's getting, the sports keep evolving. I think it's getting more and more extreme, like how much you have to commit. Like you have these people start their sport at 3 years old, right? Like that's how you become the best of whatever you're doing. I don't know if it's worth it. I think like you said, the balance of life, it's not an excuse because, well, it is and it's not, but I think it's actually truly balanced because you need to have a well-rounded life to be fulfilled, and I know a lot of athletes who just do one thing, and I think the fulfillment thing is always sort of fleeting for them. So
Yeah, I wonder about that. I mean, I see some athletes that excel at something, and then it opens the doors that they're able to do everything.
right.
Like that opened the door, but like I wonder with my kids, because like my time has passed, when as far as like I'm not going to be, you know, in the Olympics for the 110-meter high hurdles anymore.
Right.
And so I've lost my opportunity, but it's like hopefully they've got some good genetics and they will be able to play some sports. And it's like everything I read says make sure your children are well-rounded in sports and play everything and not specialize, because specialized leads to injury and burnout.
Right.
And but then again, we talk about, you see this guy that's like amazing. You're like, well, when he was 2 years old, his parents put him on skis, and they had him at ski racing camp when he was 4. And, next thing you know, wins the gold medal. And it's like, well, wait, that worked.
Yeah, it works. I think that's the good and the bad. I mean, if that's what you're trying to achieve, but I feel like it's the parent that has that goal. Well,
Sure.
it obviously
Sure.
is, right? You can't do it any other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I constantly, I'm like my daughter, we know each other from one of our children goes to school together. And then I think your other kid goes to school with my daughter. But um, I always say to my daughter, she does like gymnastics, swimming, running, skiing, and soccer. And I always constantly say to her, rank them right now. I want to know. And it always changes.
Yeah.
And I do that so that I don't want to I don't want to see that one's always fifth or whatever. Like I want to, if there's one that she's like, I hate it. I'd be like, then why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Like if you hate it, don't do it.
Yeah.
So I always want to make sure that she's enjoying them. And as soon as she doesn't enjoy it, except I take that back, because I'm pretty forceful with swimming and gymnastics.
Yeah.
I think that those are like, you have to, it's like learning to walk.
Yeah.
You got to learn to swim, and you
I
got to
mean,
learn
they're basic
proprioception.
and they're basic human. I I mean, they take the human movement to the extreme, right? Like, there's something about swimming. I think everybody should swim because it just feels so good.
Yeah.
And then with gymnastics, it's like the ultimate human movement. With dance
Yeah.
and gymnastics, those two are like, okay, that's the ultimate.
I regret not taking gymnastics as a kid.
Same. Oh, dude, that's why I like CrossFit because it's like you get to do some
Yeah.
gymnastics.
We joke about it on the show. We've years before we used to make fun of when we'd have gymnasts on the show that the reason gymnastics is unsuccessful in America is because of the white pants and the pointing toes
And the
and the
pointing
little like
toes, yeah.
the pointing toes. Like if you didn't have to point your toe, like because
Yeah,
but there's so many other aspects like when it comes to like parkour and uh, American Ninja Warrior and all these guys are learning these skills that are gymnastic skills, but they're
yeah,
not going through gymnastics. But when I take my kid to gymnastics, I watch and I'm like, wow, they will cut through this learning curve. Like the learning curve is going to change so much by going to
yeah,
gymnastics. You are
yeah.
going to learn, and I watch how their fundamentals from CrossFit. I watch how the gymnastics, just the hollow position and all
Yeah.
these things that they teach that are so built in at such a fundamental stage
Mm, yeah.
that I see where people like, you know, older people trying to do CrossFit or whatever, it's like, it's
No.
going to take you a while.
Yeah.
It's going to take you a while because they built such good fundamentals.
Do you know
Uh,
Dusty Highland from
yeah, very
Dogtown?
well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just to watch him, and when he gets really massive and strong and big, you think you know him as an athlete. If you didn't know he's a gymnast, to watch him do like a one-handed handstand or like really anything, right? Like it's amazing to watch what he can do. I think he was the
He's,
only. Yeah,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go on,
I
go
think he
on.
was the only NCAA gymnast to score a perfect 10 on the rings.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And he's so strong. And everybody would think he's like a weightlifter because you watch him do cleans and snatches and stuff like that. And you don't realize that a lot of like, a lot of that stuff requires like isolation and isometric and a lot of like smaller muscles of like the rotator cuff and stuff, all this stuff that he built up in gymnastics, that his
Exactly.
foundation was so great. I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to a masters athlete, he's one of the top guys out there.
Oh yeah.
And he's so strong. I mean, so strong. And he works at it when it comes to like Olympic weightlifting, but I think his advantage is that gymnastic background.
Yeah, his balance and control of his own body, and then his strength when he gets it. Yeah, it's unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, yeah, he's a freak. I
Yeah,
would think you, with your background in running, for the listener, probably in the intro, I explained it. Uh, what a good marathon runner you are, but you have a lot of sports background. Also, I didn't even know about the jujitsu that you do that, but I know you kind of started as a rock climber, right?
yeah. I mean, I think I was 10 when I got really into rock climbing, and growing up in Colorado, we played everything: baseball, football, all that stuff as kids on the playground. Soccer, a lot of soccer. But then when it was my choice to do a sport, the rock climbing was just super compelling for me. And actually, I was in martial arts at a young age, and the way we got into rock climbing was we got these grappling hooks from a ninja magazine, and we were up in the mountains throwing them up into
Awesome.
trees, and they were like, "Hey, if we get harnesses, we could rappel off these ropes." And so that kind of was like the gateway into rock climbing. So we went to the hardware store, got some carabiners, and we were climbing up at some local rock climbing spot, and we got one of our rope got stuck in a little branch on this cliff. This badass climber comes down and helps us out with it, and he's like, "What the hell is this? This is from a hardware store. You kids, get over here!" And he like gave us this huge lecture and like gave us the full rundown of like, okay, this is the knots you got to know. Throw all this shit in the trash. Like this is how you got to do it. So that was cool to like be initiated through like this total fear of some badass climber. But yeah, then I got obsessed with it for the next, I mean, all through my teenage years. So
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a kid, we wanted to do that, climb through trees, create our own zip lines, and it was all makeshift stuff that our parents didn't know we were doing.
yeah,
And frankly, probably didn't even care.
right,
They're like, just get
exactly.
out of the house. And I'm like, I have a rope tied across our creek that we slide across
Yes,
with another rope
yes,
tied from one hand to the other hand. And
yes.
we we would play like kick the can or release or some game, and the guy would chase you, and you would run to that rope and slide across the creek. It was like a deep creek, and we'd be on the other side, like, you can't catch me now. And then he would go, well, I'm going to learn to military climb across the rope. And it was just the stuff we did. And today I look at kids and I'm like, you have access to all this equipment, all this training, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. So when kids are like, I'm bored, I'm like, I want to smack you in the face right
Yeah.
now. We would kill to have had all these
Yes.
advantages and
Yes.
all these cool little things. So
Where
um
did you grow up?
I grew up in a little place called Fox Chapel. It was a neighborhood right outside of Pittsburgh, about like
Okay.
25 minutes outside of the city. And it's very similar to where I live now. It's all woods, and we had creeks and golf courses, and so we were constantly like jumping bikes and outdoors all day long. But and we were an hour from a ski resort and an hour from whitewater rafting, and it was a pretty cool place to grow up. So got to do everything.
Eh,
Seneca Rocks, New River Gorge, all those places were right near me. So I did climbing as a kid. I just did everything. It was like there was
Yeah.
this thing called Adventure People. Do you remember Adventure People?
I don't know.
I talked about this and I posted it online. There was like when Fisher Price made these things called Adventure People. And it was like, kids collect like Star Wars characters and everything.
Yeah.
It was like guys that flew in helicopters and rappelled out and rode like Zodiac boats, and they were just, and I remember just like rappelling these guys out my windows and climbing stuff, and and that's what I was like, I want to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, as we got older, but we had no access till we were much older. Like you said, you start climbing at 10. I probably didn't get on a harness on me till I was 18, 20 years old.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
It was, that was unheard of
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. Well, I
So
had a my dad was a surfer. That was if you chose a sport that he was sort of defined him, it was the surfing for sure. He's always hiking in the mountains and whatnot in Colorado, but he grew up in California. Was really into surfing. Shaped for Gordon and Smith for years, and so I think having just a sort of a different perspective on sport was a big part of my family culture. Was that surfing culture and really just the outdoor lifestyle, regardless of what you're
so it
doing.
didn't, you weren't like football, baseball, basketball. So it
I
was
mean, I did it because of school, but it was like,
right.
yeah, as soon as I was, and I actually stopped doing all, traditional sports when I was about, yeah, probably about sixth grade.
You were like monkey see, monkey do, like dad was doing this stuff. So you just followed him.
Well, it was more like it was like a gateway. Like he was, you'd hear stories of, the Baja trips, and he was also a hunting guide on Santa Cruz Island for 10 years.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
so he just had this crazy life. And, we got to hear stories about it. And this adventure was always at the forefront of our family culture. Like, I don't care if you go to college. I just care that you live your best life. And that was very much what his whole philosophy was. And he was the top graduating in his graduating class in college. He was like valedictorian actually in San Diego State. So he had that background, but he was very clear to emphasize, look, life is about making memories, and whatever you do, I want you to have enjoyed your journey. So I think that messaging was there from like early on. So
I used to proclaim that to everyone. That was my thing. It was like, go do that. And now I go skiing and I go surfing, and everyone's kind of, I think because of COVID, kind of jumped on that bandwagon. I'm
yeah,
like, gosh, shit, I should have shut up.
it's your fault. It's your
Yeah,
fault.
I do. I feel like, well, everyone's doing what I told them they should do, and now
Damn it.
everything's crowded.
Yeah, it is.
Everything's crowded. I mean, I was surfing in Mexico just yesterday, and I was like, oh God, I can't believe there's a crowd here. Like we're at some like remote spot, and I'm like, this is what's happening.
What is happening?
And
Get a job.
skiing is unbelievable. Like skiing, snowboarding, just how crowded it's gotten and how expensive it is. I'm like, there's
Yeah.
still people. So
Yeah.
everybody's like, and that's a good thing. I mean, it is a really good thing. And
Yeah.
hopefully what'll happen is it spreads to more places where people just take up an active lifestyle. It's what we need in this country, in this world. But I'm curious, your dad was a Gordon and Smith shaper
Yeah.
and then left the beach and went to the mountains.
Yeah, it's funny. So he got into shaping with um Gordon Smith out of college. Again, he went to San Diego State. late 60s. And he started shaping, or he actually started patching boards with Laird Hamilton's dad, Billy Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
And so they started together and kind of came up the ranks. And Skip Fry was like the big shaper down there for
Yeah.
longboards, the legend, you know. Um, and I got to meet all these guys as kids, you know, it's just all these different legends and stuff. But so my dad got good. He was an innovator in the long to shortboard era. He actually shaped the Magic. That was one of his designs. So it's actually their highest selling board to date.
Wow.
So he just had he's an artist, you know, and he just had this, like, you know, he was always pushing the limits. As a surfer, he was the guy that would be by himself out on some crazy unknown rocky point, just dropping into like the biggest surf he could find.
No
And so
fear.
if yeah, no fear, and just like, you know, to the outside onlooker would be like, that guy's got a death wish, but he was just looking for the extremes. So if you wanted to find like the remote break in California back in the late 60s, you went and found Dennis Benedum, and you know, if you're lucky, he'd take
So
you with him.
was he a big Santa Cruz Island surfer?
Yeah, so he moved to Carpinteria and started Sundance surfboards, and he actually taught George Greeno, and those guys were up there in Carpinteria, and they were shaping, and so they were all. He was kind of bringing the new information up from the city, you know, to the country kids, but they started the shaping up at Rincon, and then he got a job on Santa Cruz Island as a hunting guide. And so him and all his buddies went out there full time, and they did that for 10 years. And they hunted pigs, and they had a business because it was a privately owned island at the time. And the doctor, they called him, he basically had a company that would fly in hunters from around the world. They take them on a trophy pig hunt, and my dad and his
Do they have an airstrip out there?
they do, yeah. So they
Oh,
had,
I didn't know that.
yeah, they actually lost a couple planes like right into the cliffs, like
Wow.
in their time out there. So sketchy airstrip, but it's out
Yeah.
there. But yeah, and then there's a ranch headquarters where the doctor lived, and they had a pool and a church. And it was like a little town, and the other side of the island was the hunters' camp. So they were like the workers, you
Does
know.
that still exist on the island?
Yeah, the ranch is still all there and preserved. The doctor actually died choking on a Cornish game hen
Oh,
in his dining hall on the island.
irony.
But his yeah, exactly. But his daughter actually left, or his children left, or donated the island to the Nature Conservancy. So now it's
Sure.
government owned. But all that stuff's preserved. Yeah, so you can go out there and you can see the whole town. And so I was almost raised out there. Right before I was born, my mom said, "You know what? I can't raise a kid on this island." So they moved to Colorado on a whim, and my dad had a buddy building houses, and was like, "Hey, come out to the mountains and, you know, build houses." He's like, "All right, let's switch it up." So he left the ocean, and that's
Good
how
for
they got
him.
there. Yeah,
I that's one of my favorite places to surf in the world. I love it over there.
yeah, yeah.
And but I wonder. So is that what they did? They would surf all the time?
You know, he had surfed so much in the years prior to that that the surfing was like becoming more and more back burner. So
Oh,
I mean,
it's so
he surfed,
fun
but
there.
he was the only one out there. So he was surfing out there, and he brought his boards. He had it out there, but they were working pretty full time, and they also had a cattle ranch business out there, so they were cowboys as well. So
Wow.
they had a lot going on. So he did surf, but I think he was like super extreme. So he was like master something, do it, go all in on it, and then okay, I'm done, move on to something else.
I have friends like that.
Yeah,
I have friends that are definitely like that. For
yeah.
the people listening, Santa Cruz Island is about an hour by boat off of Santa Barbara, Ventura, and please don't go there. Just don't go there.
Excellent. It's actually
Uh,
off of New York, isn't it? It's like right off New York.
yeah, that's where it is. Alaska,
Alaska.
I
Yeah,
meant.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wonder, like, if those guys, like your dad and his buddy, if they're the ones who kind of founded those spots, because as
Surf
surfers,
wise, well, and actually George Greeno and my dad, they when George shaped his first fiberglass boat, like full, watertight, and would roll it in the
oh, those are
water.
the ones that everyone has out there.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he like
the
when he
little
was
tugboat. It looks like a
yeah,
tugboat.
tugboat, yeah. So they when he pioneered that whole concept, they were him and my dad would take it out to the island, and yeah, that was like the first time anybody had been out there. I mean, nobody even. It's late 60s, man. There was not a lot of people,
And
you know.
that's a tough channel. People don't understand that sometimes, like going out there. Because I thought about getting a wave runner to just go out, and guys are like, I don't know if you want to go through that
Yeah,
out there on a wave runner. It
that's a
gets
lot.
sketchy.
Yeah, it
Like
does.
when the swell's big,
Yeah.
you don't want to be out there.
When you're going out for a
And
surf, like it's probably the wrong time to be on a yeah,
yeah,
it's good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And but I always wondered, like, who found this, because sometimes there won't be swell there. So they had to
Yeah.
go a lot
Yeah.
to see it. Those boats too are what? I've heard those boats are like $250,000.
Are they
Like,
now? Oh,
yeah,
yeah, that's
they're
crazy.
insane.
Yeah,
They're insane. I have two friends that own one,
yeah,
and I kind of looked at them when I saw them, and I'm like, oh, this is your boat,
yeah.
and they're like, yeah, and I'm like,
This is the whole thing for
yeah. I was
250
like,
grand, really?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is
Small.
you're yeah. And apparently they're just like the coolest things in the world because
Yeah,
they're like you said, watertight.
yeah.
Like they say you can like roll in
You
them.
can, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what like my dad would tell me stories about when him and Greeno would actually like take them into waves to actually roll them and see what would happen. I mean, if the surf was big enough and it wasn't some really shallow break, they would actually do that. But yeah, some of the stories, those guys were crazy.
So did you learn to shape? Do you know how to do it?
I never learned to shape. And my dad told
Wow.
me, he goes, I taught you to build houses because I thought that was just more a better life. He's like, to be covered in foam dust all day and fiberglass. He's like, it's not. I
It's
thought I could give you
dangerous.
more than that, And so,
It's dangerous, isn't it?
I mean, he never mentioned that per se, but just as far as like quality of life, and I think he just got bored of it after a time. And he had, I mean, he estimated he shaped 10,000 boards,
Oh my
so he
God.
did so many boards, And he had
Do you
like,
have any? Do you have any of his?
yeah, I wish I had it sitting right here. I should go grab it. It's like he had this one that was three tails. There was like two channels cut up from the tail about 18 inches long, so that the tail flexed, and just some crazy stuff that he was working on. Yeah, but then he just moved on. But yeah, I got some of the boards.
Do you surf a lot?
Yeah, when I moved to California, I was 21. I didn't get out of the water for 10 years. Every day, man. Didn't matter if it was flat, I'd go out and lobster dive and surf, or I mean, I'd swim, whatever. It's like had to be in the water. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it too. I will stay in the water all day
Oh
long, like
God, it's hard with
completely.
kids, man. As I gotta say, it's like it's
I
tough.
know I'm just having these discussions with my wife because if you're not from California, like most of the people listening, you don't understand. Our water's cold as shit.
Yeah,
It's freezing.
it,
It's like today it's 60 degrees in the water,
yeah,
and kids don't like that. And they don't want to like frolic and play in it all day long because they freeze to death. I even put
yeah.
my kids in wetsuits, they get cold. Uh, I was just down in Cabo this weekend, and we were in Cabo and we went surfing like Zippers and the Rock and all those places. And
Oh yeah.
it was great because it was 80 some degrees in the water. It was great. And then we went up to Cerritos around the bend
Oh,
and
and
we were
it's
no longer in the
freezing.
Sea of Cortez.
Yeah,
It was so cold and we didn't have wetsuits and the waves
yeah,
were pumping. And my friend's like, come on. I'm like, I'm not going in.
yeah.
He's like, why not? I'm like, it's just miserable. He's like, look at these waves. I'm like, it's miserable.
It's
Eh,
the trippiest thing about Cabo. It's like right around the corner. How dang cold that water is.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
such a
And
trip.
people are like, oh man, Cerritos is a better wave and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no,
Nah,
I need the warm water.
give me zippers. I'll fight the
Uh,
crowds.
yeah, I need this warm water.
Or Nine Palms, man. I like going up the East Cape
The
too.
East Cape.
Yeah,
Yeah. We were gonna go up to shipwrecks, but
yeah. I heard I
it,
haven't been up there since it's been paved. I guess it's paved all the way up.
oh, we so I rented this car. You know how like every car is like a one cylinder car down in
Oh yeah,
Mexico. We rent this like one cylinder, and my buddy's like 6'2", 6'3" or something, and I put him in the passenger seat. The boards don't fit, so he's got to sit all the way up. And I'm like, let's go to shipwrecks because it looks like the winds are good. And he's like, you mean I got to sit in this car for an hour on a dirt bumpy road? And I'm like, oh, shut up.
shut up. It's the adventure, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't go because of that.
Oh man.
But we drove to Cerritos anyway. So
Oh man.
he sat in that seat. Um, so then when did running come in? Did you always know you were a good runner?
So funny. In high school, I got into Bob Marley's music from an album my dad had, and I loved the music. And I had the great idea with my buddies to get dreadlocks in our hair in seventh grade.
It's
So we
hilarious.
show up to school with like wax in our hair, and we showed up to school, but only I had the dreadlocks. Everyone else washed their hair the night before. So I'm by myself, just getting shit from everyone. Hey, wash your hair, you hippie. And that's all I had to hear to keep it another day. And then that turned into a thing, and it turned
Yeah.
into a thing. And then fast forward 3 years, and I still got dreadlocks. I got really into like the whole Rastafarian thing and started a band, sang and played guitar, and
Were you smoking a lot of weed at the
Oh
time?
yeah, baby.
It's Colorado.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. It was a great time. And I found out reading Bob Marley's biography that he would do these disciplines in the stamina. And I was like, that's interesting. And that he would take his entourage for 18-mile runs around Kingston periodically. So I was like, well, you know, if Bob's going to do it, I got to give that a try.
Yeah.
So went after it. And I took to it right away as far as the fitness part and the lifestyle of just getting out and like doing something for this concept of discipline with your health. You know, I think I had that sort of perspective with it. And so in that way, it became a staple of my overall fitness regime from then on, you know, from I'd say about 16 years old till now.
And
But,
wait,
yeah.
where were you in Colorado?
We were in a town called Durango in the
Oh,
Four
I know
Corners. Yeah,
Durango.
you know Durango. Yeah, lived on a ranch called Falls Creek Ranch. It was a 1,000-acre ranch with an HOA with 60 homes. So all my friends, we all lived out there. We had a lake and cliffs everywhere, and so it was kind of like this, like you were saying, you know, it's like we had similar childhoods. We took our old rock climbing rope and we found a bunch of rocks, put them in a burlap sacks, tied the rope around one end, dropped it into the lake about 15 foot offshore, and then climbed 80 foot up a ponderosa pine tree and tied the other end. And then our zip line went essentially about 95 feet top to bottom in a horizontal of about 15 feet. So it's kind of like just jumping out of a tree about
Yeah.
100 feet, but you put a harness on and you had to lean back so you didn't get rope burns. Otherwise you'd sort of try to grab the rope
Oh my
and
God.
just straight into the water into our lake, you know? So
That sounds awesome
yeah, you
though.
would have loved it, man. It'd be right up your alley. You'd have been right there. So yeah,
That's
that was our childhood.
I'm right beside me right here is our creek. And I used to have a rope that hangs out of this tree that I would do rope climbs and then pull up onto the deck and swing off. And my friend Crazy Bobby put up there. And the day of the big floods, like a few years ago, Hunter calls me, who you know,
Yep.
and Hunter's like, I'm headed to Walmart right now. I'm going to buy every inflatable they have, and we're going to float down the creek behind
Yeah.
your house. And I'm like, Hunter, you know, people have died in that creek. He's like, I don't care. We're doing it. So he comes over, and another friend of ours. And the next thing you know, other guys start coming over, and we're posting videos, and everybody, next thing you know, we've got like 10 guys at my house.
Dang.
And Hunter climbs up in the tree and gets the rope down. And he's like, we're going to use this rope so that we don't, you know, end up in the Malibu at the Ridge Dam.
Yeah.
He's like, we don't want to go over the dam. And the next thing you know, we were like, screw it. And we're all taking boogie boards and foamies, and we're going down the creek and we're
I love it.
surfing on them and we're
Oh, it's
tying up.
awesome.
And I felt like I was 12 years old again.
Yeah.
And the makeshift stuff that we did. And it was so funny because I had like a meeting. It was like we started at like 8 or 9 a.m. and I had a meeting at noon. And the next thing I know, I look at the watch, it's 2 p.m. And I'm like, this is the best day I've ever had. I just blew through a meeting. I didn't pay attention to anything. But people were yelling at us. Neighbors were like, you're going to get killed. And I was like, go back to your bubble. Like we're having there's like 10 grown men jumping in a dirty creek.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was so fun.
It's priceless. That's like,
yeah. I'll remember that day for the rest
forever,
of my life.
100%.
And so when you started doing this running, Durango is known for a lot of long distance runners, mountain bikers.
Yeah.
Was there a community down there?
Well, I mean, for the running, I wasn't a part of any running community. We had a cross country ski team, and in 6th grade I did that. And the preseason for skiing was running, and so that was my first introduction to training to run with like a group, you know, and it was gnarly. I mean, it was 10-mile runs up the mountains, you know, it was intense. But the mountain biking was definitely big. You know, the first World Mountain Bike Championships in 1992 were in Durango. So we had a huge scene. Ned Overend, Greg Erbold, all these guys lived there. So like you got to meet them and hang out with them. And as kids, we were highly influenced by that scene. But the running scene, I don't remember any sort of running scene. And I remember my bandmates dragging them out on runs, and they'd just be like, dude, this is your thing. No. Not in this.
Yeah.
But I stayed with it, man. When I moved to I got into boxing. I came from kind of a fight culture. My dad was a fighter, and another thing that he did. But yeah, so I got into boxing, Golden Gloves for 2 years before I moved to California. And the boxing was expensive in California. Like to join a gym was just expensive.
In Colorado.
In Colorado, it was cheap. So in Califorado,
California, it was expensive.
When I moved to California, it was so expensive. I was like, I don't have the money for that. I'm just gonna keep running. So I just ran on the beach and started surfing and just kind of stopped the boxing. But
Were you
um,
skiing and snowboarding in
oh
Durango?
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
and we were jumping off 40-foot cliffs when we were 10 years old. You know, I mean, it was
yeah,
like you had to do a 360. You know, by that age, or you weren't keeping up with the. And
right.
you got ditched. You know, and it was so crazy because we take the lift up 45 minutes from town
Where would you go,
with your
Durang
buddy
to
to
Purgatory?
purgatory, yeah. And if you fell, you know, or whatever, you wiped out, no one's waiting for you, and you're with like 20 of like your friends. And if you drop, you get ditched, it's done, man. You know, and so it's sort of like this social clout where, you know, you didn't want to ride the bus home that day. You know, so you learn to keep up, and you learn to either be a badass or
Yeah, it's so funny. I wait for friends now. I check on them and everything, but I remember
yeah,
back in the day, it was like, "Fuck
we're
you,"
gone.
you know,
Yeah,
like,
dude.
"This is your fault."
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I remember I got trapped one time in like wet, slushy powder, like where I went face down, and I was like, I couldn't get my boots off out of my skis, and I was like, "I think I'm gonna die here. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna die here." And my
Oh,
friends were gone.
yeah.
Like they just left me, and I was like, "I've got to figure out how to move through this like cement to get up to my feet to because the way I was contorted, and I'm just like end of the day and I'm so exhausted, and I'm like I had enough room to breathe. I'm like, okay, well, I know I can lie here and breathe for a while.
Yeah.
I'll kind of like relax and I'll get out of the like half hour later. My friends are like, where were you? And I'm like, you guys are dicks.
Yeah.
We left a friend one time. There's a slope in Vale called Prima Cornice, which is I lived in Vale for a little bit. There was a buddy came out to visit us, and it's really rocky tree area that you got to like jump turn it. And we're skiing down it, and he falls and slides, and he he gets caught between two trees. Like his skis are at each end of a tree, and he's hanging upside down, and he's like his head's downhill, and
Oh.
it's a pretty steep pitch, like 45-degree angle pitch or something. So he doesn't have the strength to get up to you know to get out of his bindings, and we're way downhill of him, but we can see him, and he's screaming.
Oh
And I
no.
remember just going, I'm like, are we gonna have to hike up there to let him out of this? And all of a sudden we were all like, let's go take another loop.
We'll come back on from the top.
We'll come back from the top. So we're like, his name was Wade. We're like, Wade. And he's like, help me. And he wasn't the level of skier of all of us. And we're like, listen, we're going to go up top. We'll see you. We'll come get you.
Back.
So we get on the chairlift, and the chairlift kind of goes past it. And we hear him still going like, ah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so mean, but it's actually the smart thing to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, by the time we probably made it quicker than if we had hiked. And by
Yeah.
the time we got there, he was out. Someone helped him out
Oh,
or
really?
something.
Okay. All
Yeah, I
right.
forget how he got out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we tortured him that trip. There was a buddy that came out from Pittsburgh that just shouldn't have been with us.
Oh man.
We made him jump off like a 30-foot cliff one day, and we hiked to this bowl, and we get to the cliff, and he's like, "You didn't tell me there's a no option cliff." And we're like,
You're
"You got to
welcome.
go off." We're like, "You're
Yeah.
going to cause an avalanche if you don't go off
Yeah.
soon." And he just literally went like this, just went, "Ah," and just rather than try to accomplish it, he just like almost passed out off the cliff. And we were like, we can't do that.
Brutal.
I think those incidents both happened in the same day. And you know who Shane McConkney is?
I'm not sure I do.
Shane's one of the greatest skiers of all time.
Okay.
He passed away in he was wingsuiting with the skis on. But people argue best skier of all time.
Yeah.
And we met him that day.
Oh wow.
And skied with him. And it was just like
Legendary.
to this day where we all remember the day we skied with Shane McConkney. And
Dang.
and we were skiing this thing called the Whoopie, and Wade did a face plant into it. It like you got pulled into it, like the G's of going so fast into it. You'd come down this like little cliff band into this like half pipe and to shoot out of the half pipe.
Oh,
It'd be
wow.
equivalent of like almost like a super ramp now, and like that you see in skateboarding.
Yeah.
But the G's, like you almost have to like be pushing against it as you're coming up of it because you're being sucked into it.
Yeah.
And he got sucked it like his whole body just like
oh, that's great.
we just abused him.
Oh yeah.
So, uh, Durango, this crazy, crazy athletic community. Because I had friends from high school that went to college there, a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
Did you go to school there?
I up to high school, and then
Okay.
yeah, after that. So my dad was building houses. Me and my buddies started doing that. A bunch of my buddies, and like you said, everyone was like, it's just insane the level of athletics. Growing
Yeah.
up, like everybody was just, I mean, so many Olympic cross country skiers and cyclists, and just a bunch of my friends. So I think it was just like the par was set so high, and in running as I've come to California and I got into the marathon. People are like, "Oh, you're a great runner," and I feel like, yeah, I guess where I'm from, everybody just kind of had to be that way,
Everybody's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, but I was there till I was 21, so I was there for 3 years after high school. But by early teens, we were already pushing the extremes of everything we could. From my friends were really into kayaking. The one thing I didn't really do much of was the kayaking. I was more of the rock climbing. So
I took up kayaking as we used to go on the river and go whitewater rafting. And my buddy's like, I'll teach you. And we tried in the river and I had some difficulty. He goes, let's go to the pool and we're going to practice your Eskimo roll or
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah.
So we were practicing it a bunch at a country club in their pool. And I said, he's like, listen, he's like, if you can't get up, rather than pull the skirt and come out and have to set up again, he's like, I'll lift you up,
Yeah.
so that you can practice again. So he's like, just tap the bottom of the boat with your hand. And so I would tap it. He'd set me back up. And then this one time I was just having trouble. I couldn't make the roll. I couldn't make the roll. So I tapped and he didn't pick me up. And I tapped and he didn't pick me up. And I started to panic. And rather than pull my skirt and slide out, I grabbed onto him because he's standing there. And I use him to kind of pull me up. And I get my face out to get a breath. And I look at him and he's just laughing hysterically at me as I then fall back under. And I pull the skirt and I come out and I'm like, what the dude? What? And he's like, that was hilarious. I go, no, it wasn't. You almost drowned me. And so then I said to him, I go, so we get in the river and we're kayaking. I go, what happens like if I get stuck somewhere? He's like, well, you pull the skirt. I go, what if I can't? He goes, someone will come get you. One of us will come get you. I go, well, what if like you're not around? He's like, you can pull the skirt and get out. I go, okay, hypothetically. Do you ever hit your head underwater on rocks? He goes, oh yeah, all the time. And I go, is that
Oh,
why he goes, that's why you wear a helmet. I go, so let's say I smash into a rock and I'm knocked out. He
oh,
goes, you're dead. And I go, yeah.
wow.
And that was the end of kayaking for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I have similar stories with my buddies. I had a buddy that I lived with in California, Dave Persolia, and this is a guy that dropped one of those waterfalls in Yosemite. It's in a movie called Air
Yeah.
Raid. It's super obscure, but he drops a 600-foot section of waterfall that's in water, out of water. Like he's going back, he's skimming off slick rock, and then he gets back in the water, and then he's doing these 30-foot airs, just skipping off the rock for like 600 feet. Insane, dude. But he lost like five of his best buddies in different scenarios, and
That's the one thing about all these sports.
yeah,
Kelly Starrett. Are you familiar with Kelly?
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Kelly's big in the CrossFit world. He was also I watched a red tail hawk just fly by the
Oh,
other day.
nice.
The Kelly Kelly was a big kayaker, huge kayaker, and uh, all the guys I've met in all these extreme sports and I've had on the show here, they all have the stories about the dead friends.
Yeah,
And occasionally you'll hear in football or basketball somebody dying. Somebody gets hit in the face with a baseball. But that's like a 1 in a million.
yeah,
I have a buddy who's a free skier, was professional, Drew Steckline. And I said, funny enough, his cousin's the one that in the kayak that almost killed me.
yep.
But two totally different stories because Drew's from Idaho and Montana and Teddy's from Pittsburgh, and they're cousins. It's like so random that I know these people. Drew said to me one time, I go, why'd you quit? Because he's a photographer now. And he goes, I think he said 6. And I go, 6 what? He goes, 6 dead friends.
Damn, dude.
And I was like, wow, like,
That's real. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And so if you do it enough,
yeah.
you're gonna
It's gonna
come
happen.
close or like,
Yeah. My one of my best friends, when he just turned 18, went off a 100-foot cliff, just hiking, and they were actually trundling, pushing boulders off, and he slipped. Jed Paddling, that was his name, and it just like, yeah, it sent shockwaves through me and my buddies because we lived in the mountains. I mean, it's just like we were always on the cliffs, we were always climbing and just doing extreme everything. So for him to just be out there hiking, he's with two of our other friends, and one climbed down the cliff and gave him CPR for 45 minutes, but he died on impact, and it was just intense. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, you're mortal, and at that age, you don't
Yep.
feel mortal, you feel like you can do anything. And then that happens. And, some people, I guess, would quit the sport, and I think it depends on what your relationship with it is. But I think for us, it was like, all right, let's live a life that would make him proud, or
Yeah.
let's keep
Yeah.
living the life. I mean, you appreciate the dangers that come with all these things we do, but let's keep going. And we love our lives, and he lived a life that was unbelievable, even up till 18 years old. Like most people will never live
Yeah.
like he
I
did.
always say that because I'm the comedian. A lot of times people ask me to like speak at funerals or whatever it is. And usually like one of my friends like this, when they pass, I always say, don't be sad for them. They lived 4 times the life that you lived.
Exactly.
Like be sad for us because
Yes.
we've lost them,
Yeah.
but they lived their life.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing like they could do more of what they did, but they've already were in the bonus.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
were in the bonus at age 10.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. My dad had a
so
cool thing that he said in the newspaper, when Jed passed, and he said, they lived in the mountains, and they didn't just walk along the cliffs; they danced on them.
uh,
And I think that was like, that's like,
profound.
it's not just being out there and like doing these extreme sports. It's like, it's thinking of it as from this artistic perspective, like if that's your craft, like you're out there because you're compelled to be out there, not just because, you're checking some box. So yeah, we're
So
lucky.
you're a mountain man. How come you do like the marathons that are just like the regular
Great
flat
question.
marathons?
So I'm retired, so that's good news. Just decided a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago. 70 marathons. I was basically surf bombing in
Wait,
Malibu.
what's your best time? Best time.
Uh, so my last 11 marathons have been sub 230, between 223 and 229. The fastest was 223. And it's
Wow.
one of those things where it's like, I mean, I had a progression in the 70 that I ran. I was able to keep getting better and better and better, and learn. And I was a student of the sport. And I just wanted to see what I could do. And when I turned 30, that's when I made the choice. Like, okay, I'm going to cut out the CrossFit. I'm going to cut out the jiu-jitsu. I'm just going to focus on this. And I lost a lot of my strength. I lost a lot of my, well-rounded.
Where were you doing CrossFit? Were you ever at Precision?
No, I was at. We had actually Malibu. Malibu. We had this guy Andre. He kind of introduced me to the whole thing. Andre Habenak, and he was an amazing trainer. But this is back in '09, so that was when the
Okay.
CrossFit Games were up on the
Yeah.
ranch up in NorCal.
Yeah, that's when I started.
Yeah, so we take our motorcycles up there and check it out. And but then this guy started Malibu CrossFit, which is still there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we were mostly doing
Mike,
Yeah,
or
Mike
I'm
Anderson.
Mike Anderson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mike
I
Anderson.
don't know
Yeah,
why I almost said Mike
great,
Anthony.
great guy.
Mike
Yeah,
Anderson. He's a good buddy, and I'm working on the McDonald's thing that I'm doing right now. Is I'm working with
nice.
him.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, so but we were like mostly up at Pepperdine, just bringing a set of weights out of the van up there. And then I was remodeling the Malibu Racket Club, and we built a full like pull up cage up there.
Hmm.
So we were there for a year and a half, and we had our own CrossFit set up at the Racket Club.
That's
So
awesome.
that was cool. But yeah, but I was 30, and I remember walking for the first time. It was my 30th marathon. I was 30 years old. I was fucking fit. And I remember walking at mile 16 because I was so strong. I was just gassed. And I said, I got to make a choice. Like, do I really want to find out what I could do in the marathon? And I was like, all right, let's just go for it. So all in, all marathon. And I ran about 12 marathons, I think, in those years. And yeah, I got to that sub 230
So at that
level.
pace, are you winning these races?
It depends on. You could be a 230 guy and win every single marathon you want to
Right.
win, and get invited and not have to pay, if depending on the race you go to. So for me, I wanted to go to like Boston and run with the
Right.
Kenyans.
Right.
I
You want to
wanted to
run
see
the
like,
famous, yeah.
okay, like how do I stand up against like the best in the world? The
And
Africans.
you're running in that pack, right? Like if you're running sub 230, you're running at the front pack, right?
I mean, so my last marathon was last year, Boston. I was an invited professional in the men's field. And I was with the pack for the first mile, and then they peel away because I was my first mile was like 5:01. Their first mile was like 4:45. So
Wow.
it's like, well, at first mile we were the same. So I guess the second mile they
Yeah.
clubs at 4:45, and I'm still back at the 5 minute pace, right? So
But you
um,
you you also at that point, don't try to
yes,
you're not
100%.
like you're not
Yeah,
capable of that,
yeah,
and so don't do it or you're gonna blow
yes,
out. Right.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, you get to know your paces and your gears so well, and
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do 100-mile weeks, for 3-4 months at a time at
Right.
different points in my running career. So, I it was awesome, and I'm so glad that I did that and that I made the choice to go after it. And then what happens, I think, in any sport is you've created these habits, and you just it becomes your norm, and that's your day to day. And I think you can spend the rest of your life in that state, and I think I was going to run another marathon in December, and my wife was like, you know what, maybe you're done, because I was having issues with motivation,
Mhm.
and I'm very highly self-motivated, so that was like a
Mhm.
weird thing. And I really had that thought of like, yeah, you know what, like, it's okay to be done, and it's actually great to be done, because then you can take the energy that you would have kind of dumped into that and go a new direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm feeling great about getting back into CrossFit and strength and jujitsu and martial arts and surfing and all that stuff that I just wasn't doing for those years. So
Yeah, but it's good that you're there, that I think it was a book I read called Quit,
mm,
and it was all about knowing when to quit something and when to move on. I saw Ricky Gervais in an interview one time, and it was awesome because he said, "You always hear these like motivational speech, never give up, never quit, never." And he's like, "Really?
yeah,
Really?" He goes, "Because I wanted to be a pop star." And he goes, "I was in like a Flock of Seagulls type band." He goes, "Eventually I quit." And he goes, "If I never quit, I never would have gotten into comedy and
hmm,
created The Office, which then spurred the United States version of The Office and all the great movies and TV shows that he's made." So he's like, "Thank God I quit."
that's awesome.
But it's knowing when to quit,
Right?
like knowing, you know, don't give up,
Yeah,
but know when to quit, know when it's time to do something new, or you've lost the passion.
100%.
There's
Yeah,
nothing worse than doing something when the passion's not there. I know from like my projects, my comedy projects, there are things that I love and think are amazing, but at a certain point I realized that like we've run out of gas.
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm
yeah,
going to create something new where I can have that passion or put it into something else.
yeah,
And I think that's why I have so many hobbies and so many different things, because I don't know, I just get bored being
yeah.
obsessed. I'm amazed at your obsession of running and how you were able to focus everything on that one thing. That's something
Yeah.
most people can't do.
Well, I'm amazed at it because I would call myself ADD all the time before that,
Yeah.
and I think it did give me a discipline by making that choice and then just sticking to it. I gained a new discipline that I didn't have in my younger years. I think maybe that's one thing I'll take with me. But I feel so good to be closing that book.
Well,
That
I don't want to
chapter.
harp on it because it is like in the past at this point, but I'm amazed at someone that you call yourself ADD, because I'm not. And running to me, I've always been like, it's funny, I was a sprinter in college, but since college, I still sprint a little bit every once in a while to play, but I run. I go on runs. I'll run 3 miles here, 4 miles there, and it's kind of boring for me. I got to bring music. I have to run like somewhere that it's like I'm going to look at stuff, or I'm always like checking my watch and going, can I go faster, or where's my heart rate?
Yeah.
How did you do, 100-mile weeks being ADD?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think it's just a matter of like you do a little bit and then you can do a little bit more and you do a little bit more and it just keeps going that way. I think, initially when I ran, my relationship with the sport was like 4 miles 3 times a week. And I'm talking from like, and I guess in high school I would do like more like 5 days a week, but it was most of my life, it was more like 3 days a week. And so when I started to kind of turn that dial up a little bit, it's just one of those things where it just kind of gets easier like anything else. So it's like, okay, now the 5 to 6 miles, or that's kind of feeling easy. And I can add a day another day in the week. Okay, now the 7s and 8s are feeling like no big deal, and I think it's just like it's a fitness thing, and I think that at a certain point it becomes about a like a culture thing, because then you find yourself just like with CrossFit, you find yourself in that community of people, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like then you start that game of like, hey, what if we did this, or hey, let's go meet at that mountain and like just bomb up it. Oh, let's go do. And when you find yourself in the community, that's when things happen that would definitely never happen by yourself. And I think it's like, even if you're the crazy one, like if you're the crazy one that's always throwing the idea out there, if you have somebody that's like, oh, all right, man, that's nuts, but I'll meet you for it, you know.
Right.
So I think that was what happened with me, where it's like I in Santa Monica, and I was living in Malibu for all those years, and in Santa Monica I found a group of guys that were fast and crazy and down to do whatever. And so I just had like this 10-year period where I just was in the right place at the right time. We were all like fired up to go after sort of Olympic trials type of marathoning. And it was like, how crazy can we make our training? How far can we push this? And that's the adrenaline and the excitement that I crave. And without that part for me, it's like, whatever. It's just like running to run, to your point, like it would never happen. But with that component of the competitiveness with your buddies and like that adrenaline, the excitement of like, this is nuts. We're going to run 29 miles and we're going to do we'll take a break every mile, but we're going to do 5 mile repeats at 5:20 pace. And we're going to just repeat that the whole time and see if we
Wow.
survive, and it's like all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to shit my pants just thinking about that workout, but
Yeah.
let's give it a try. And so I think it's that perspective, and it's like the oh shit factor.
The CrossFitters that are listening right now are cringing so hard because as much as they will beat up their body and do workouts, anytime running's involved, most of them are just like,
Oh,
oh. I mean, I find it like when I got into CrossFit, I found all the running very easy. And I saw that most CrossFitters had an aversion to running.
yeah.
And when they were given the option of getting on an Airdyne or a rogue bike or jump rope or something, it was like anything but the
But the
run.
run,
And I'm
yeah.
like, why don't you guys want to run? I'm
Yeah.
like, it's so easy. And now as I get older, I'm finding running harder and harder and harder. My times are getting so slow. And I'm like, I feel exactly the same. And I feel like I'm moving at the same pace. Why is my pace so slow?
Yeah, it's going the other way. Yeah.
Awful,
Yeah.
awful. Um, I ran a marathon once. I take that back. I've run two marathons, and then I did that backbone run. The first marathon I ran, I trained for like 6 months, and it was just getting easier and easier and easier. And the question I had about you about like knowing your gears and knowing your pace, I remember I did New York City. I ran across the Verrazano Bridge, and I guess that's the 1 or 2 mile mark, I guess, when you're like crossing.
Yeah.
And I looked at my pace, and I'm like, geez, I'm running a 7-minute pace. I'm flying.
Yeah.
And I was like, I better slow down. I was like, everybody told me your adrenaline will kick in. I should slow down. So I slowed down a little bit, but at like 12 miles, I was like, I'm going to qualify for Boston. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am flying. And I was like, I didn't know I was that good at, like, I've always been a bad long distance runner, but apparently I'm pretty good. And then I had to go over the bridge to get into the city, which I'm sure you've
Mile
run New York.
16. Yeah. Yeah. I know it well.
I hit a wall that I didn't know you could hit. Like if you've ever watched that Wide World of Sports commercial where the guy starts like crippling, I think
Yeah.
it's like in an Iron Man, he starts like
Oh,
falling on the
yeah.
ground. That was me.
Okay.
I mean, I was out of salt. I didn't understand nutrition at the time. I hydrated wrong. I hyponatremia or whatever, hyponatremia,
Yeah.
like I drank
Yep.
too much water,
Yep.
not enough salt,
Hyponatremia. Yep.
hyponatremia.
Yep.
And I like started buckling, and everybody's like, when you get into New York, they're going to cheer you on and you're going to get this adrenaline rush. I was literally telling people to shut up. They're like, come on, man, you can do it. Well, come on. And like,
Screw
because
off.
I was up with people that were running, and here's this guy that's going like, ah, and they're going, come on, dude. And I'm like, and just every muscle in my body's cramping.
Oh,
And
that's
I was
so
like,
good.
am I having a heart attack? What's happening? And a policeman came up to me and he's like, you got to get off the course, man. Come on. Like
Wow.
something's wrong. You got to go. And
Whoa.
somebody handed me a stick, like a rolling stick off the side of the road. And I just started rolling my quads. And I was like, all right, I can walk to the aid station. And I just drank down so much of the Gatorade type drink. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna walk for a little bit. I started walking. I was like, okay, now I'm gonna jog. And then I was like,
Wow.
I'm just gonna run to every aid station, drink a Gatorade, and then run. And that's pretty much what I did for the rest of the race and
Yeah.
finished under 4 hours.
Nice.
But my first my first 12 were like 140 and 12 and a half. And I was like, wow, I added an
Uh,
extra hour onto the
yeah.
next one.
That's
Um,
I paced Kevin Hart for his first marathon for New York. Exact same thing on the bridge. Both hamstrings cramped, and then we made it a quarter mile, and then both like triceps of all things cramped, and then his traps, like every muscle in your body that can cramp, it happened in the last 10 miles. So you guys had a similar experience, but he ran a 4:05 that day. So
oh, good. I
you got
beat
to
Kevin.
beat
I
yeah.
beat you, Kevin. I beat you. I ran with Howard Stern's wife, and she didn't run much slower than me. And one of my buddies that I trained with that I was killing in training ran past me in
Oh,
the
it's the worst.
last, like literally like the last 100 yards.
It's the worst.
And I've never lived it down. But and Kevin lives right up here behind me,
Oh yeah,
pretty close. Yeah, yeah. I known Kevin for 20 some years
yeah,
from comedy.
comedian.
Like
Yeah,
yeah,
he's great.
we
He's
started together.
hilarious, man. The
I actually
guy.
started before him. He opened for me a couple times. I love
Nice.
telling
That's
people that.
amazing.
I'm like Kevin Hart opened for me.
Yeah.
Now, did you get to work with him because you were
Yep.
working with Nike?
Yeah. So I was for all of his from the 10K up to the marathon. I was designing all of his training, and then so I paced him for because he had a relationship with Nike where he was inviting people out to run when he was on tour. And then he's like, "Look, these thousands of people are showing up. I don't know what to do with this. Nike, you know what to do with this. Come out, you know." And so it was kind of a cool relationship. But then he got into this. Okay, maybe I want to do a 10K, not just a 5K. And so Boss, his trainer, was doing a strength training, but they didn't do running coaching. So they brought me in, designed. I worked with Boss to create a schedule for him that he could follow. Did the 10K, did it great, knocked it out of the water. It's like, I want to do a marathon. So I was like, all right, created a plan for that. And it was interesting because he did it quite a bit of the training that I outlined for him. But the whole thing was he just went out too hard and fast, just kind of like you experienced. And
Yep.
we could not hold him back. And he had his headphones on. So he was just like in his zone. And yeah, but then he ran again the next year, I believe. I didn't run with him on that one, but
So
yeah.
when you do that, when you pace someone like Kevin, which is at a much slower pace than what you do, you don't consider that running the
Oh,
marathon. That was
no.
like a training day for
Yeah,
you.
I wouldn't count that as one of my marathons. At the same time, it's harder for me to do that. Like I get so locked up. Like when we'd stop, when Kevin's cramping, I'm like, man, I'm getting tired. And then we'd stop in a quarter mile, and
Interesting.
all of that stopping and starting and the slow, tight hip movements, like I don't train for that. I train for this open stride 2.5 hour experience, like to be out there for 4 hours. And I'm like, now I'm like
Yeah.
hungry, and I'm like, dude, what is the deal with this?
Yeah. A friend of
Yeah.
mine said that to me once. I go, I don't know what pace to go. He goes, you know what? Go as fast as you can. The faster you do it, the faster
Yes,
you're off the course.
that's how I
He's like,
feel.
get out of there. And so I think that's why I did what I did. But
Yeah.
um, you said something interesting there that reminded me. I trained for it, and I'm a weird guy. I could talk to you for hours about this, and it's not about me. It's about you. Um, I'm terrible on the show about talking about myself all the time, but that's how I always listen to people and then I relate it to how I do it, or I
Yep.
go, oh, well, and that's how I am in CrossFit workouts. Like
Yeah.
I want to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Like when I see a flight of steps, I
Yeah.
run up the steps
Yes.
because I don't like walking up
Get it
steps.
over with. Yeah.
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 To
Exactly.
me, 2 seconds of pain at like a high degree is better than 10 seconds of pain at a lower
Lesser.
degree.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So when it comes to my running, I do like now I try to like do heart rate and figure stuff out. And I was going to go back to saying Mike Anderson told me when we did the backbone, I said, they want me to do it again. And I said, if I did it again, I could only do it if we made it 100 miles.
Mm.
And so if we ran the whole trail and then ran back on the road, that makes 100 miles. And he goes, don't do that. And I said, why? He goes, a road run is going to hurt you a lot more. He goes, that's 30 miles, 32 miles on the road are going to destroy you because foot pattern is the same every single time.
Yeah. No
And so
variation at all. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, when you're up in the hills, you're doing different stuff, you're moving around. He
Yeah.
goes, you're changing paces. When you hit the road,
Oh,
all the damage will be done.
yes.
And he goes,
Yes.
I just wouldn't do it. I was like, good
Smart
thinking.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. So he talked me out of that. We might do it again this year, though. We're talking about.
Do the extra 30 miles on the trail. Just go back up that
I know
gnarly.
I might do it, but I'm also talking about riding my
Oh
mountain
yeah.
bike the whole way, which
That'd be
everybody
fun.
goes, oh, it's so much easier. No,
No, it's not.
because those hills are
Uphills, man. Oh,
brutal,
yeah. Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah.
You can walk faster than you can ride up some of
Oh
those
yeah.
hills.
Yeah.
Um, but something you would know, I want to get into the Nike thing, and but I want to ask you, this is just for me and my own personal thing.
Yeah.
My heart rate in CrossFit, I'm 51 years old. I work out in CrossFit. I'm usually at about a 170 to 180 is my heart rate when I'm working out.
Yeah.
And people would go, oh my God, that's crazy because 220 minus your age. If I pushed it in CrossFit, I could watch my heart rate go up to almost 200.
Yeah.
And so when I run, people are like, oh, you should go to 70%. 70% of my maximum heart rate's like 119. That's like walking.
Yeah.
I can't get down to
Yeah.
that. Like
Right.
when I did the backbone, I maintained 145. Like I tried to be, that was so I'd hike up the hills and then run down them and
Yep.
run on the flats.
Yep.
And I maintained about a 145 the whole time. And
Yeah.
it took us like 19 hours. My point is, is there something wrong with me that I have a super high heart rate?
No, and I mean that's why these calculations for heart rate don't work based off the 220 minus your age plus how much you ate last night. The only real way to know what your anaerobic threshold is, therefore like what energy system you're working in, is to have a VO2 max test or a lactate
Yeah.
threshold test. If you don't have that, heart rate is kind of a guessing game. And you can have, I mean, it's one data point, So for you, your better data point, or one of the important components, is understanding like, okay, I can push it to this heart rate and I'm still okay. Like at 170, I can still complete a 30-minute workout. That's as important as knowing anything else with heart rate, as far as like percentages go. Because percentages of what? Of maximum, of a hypothetical maximum that someone's come
Right.
up with. So, the thing about the heart rate test is you can actually see when the gas exchange of oxygen and carbon, when the carbon outweighs the oxygen within
And which
the
test
lungs.
is this?
The VO2 max.
Okay.
So it's measuring the oxygen in, carbon out, and the correlation with the heart rate. So as your heart rate increases, as the workload increases, you're able to get enough oxygen in, enough carbon out, and things are okay. And then eventually, the work becomes so extreme that those things cross, and you have so much carbon in your lungs, you're not expelling the waste fast enough. So that's when you go anaerobic. Anaerobic just means without oxygen, and that's when your metabolic system changes into mostly glycogen burning. And so, again, none of these things are problems. These are just different ways our bodies access energy, right? So being anaerobic, that's really healthy. That's cardiorespiratory fitness. That builds heart strength. That's what most CrossFit workouts are. Aerobic running or aerobic anything, aerobic row or whatever you're doing aerobic, even CrossFit can be aerobic, but that's
Yeah.
mostly fat burning. And to have the right combination, or to play with the combination or the ratios of the aerobic and the anaerobic relative to each other, is how we get these different peaks and valleys in fitness. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of knowing what each system is or when you're in it, So for you at
Right.
145, you're definitely aerobic,
Yeah.
So
So you have like a crazy VO2 max. Isn't yours
80,
one like
80,
super high?
85 is my highest that I
And that's
worked
like
with.
Lance Armstrong high.
Yeah, it was actually, I think he was right. 85, 87, something like that. So
Jesus. Like even Hunter, I think Hunter's pretty freakish. He's like 74 or something.
well,
Am I
it's
right?
it's it's the thing about that is it's relative to your body mass. So
Right.
with Hunter, he's a heavy dude. I mean, and he could
Right.
definitely drop dozens of pounds, and then if you got VO2 max tested, because his running is freakish. He's like, he runs so well. His paces are nuts for his size. I've done some like 20 miles with him where it's like we're running 5:30 pace, and at his size, you just don't see that, So
People don't understand that about him.
yeah,
And I try to explain that to him and they don't get it. And I'm like, the guy's a freak.
he's a total freak. Yeah.
Uh, I want to do this show forever. but I just got to notice that I'm low on
All
battery,
right, man.
and I don't want it. I don't want it to go
Just to
out on
X
us.
out, yeah.
Um, the Nike thing. You were coaching at Nike.
Yeah, for 7 years, I was one of their global running coaches and a lot of great opportunities. I did, I was actually the head running coach for their entertainment marketing. So that's why the Kevin Hart stuff. Worked with
Gotcha.
Theo Rossi, DJ Vice, John Gurley from Portugal the Man. I just had the list of awesome humans was really,
That's so cool.
it was really cool, man. We didn't quite get to you yet, so you were on the list, but we hadn't gotten there yet. But yeah, it was awesome, man. And then I also got to coach like on the streets, just coach like your everyday athletes, and yeah, it was a great time. So
And now you're coaching on your own, though,
yep,
right?
still coaching. Yep, me and my wife have a company, Guru Running, and yeah, we're coaching marathon to overall just fitness athletes. So yeah,
So, like anyone that's listening to this could contact you and say, "Hey, I
yeah,
want coaching,
yep,
blah blah blah," and you'll put together a program for them and
yep,
blah blah blah.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So I know a lot of people are like that. So where do they go? They go Guru Racing,
They could go to gururunning.com.
Guru Running,
Yep.
Guru.
Yeah, and then running.com and sorry, .co. Or bluebenadum.com as well. Just my name. Or follow me on Instagram.
I'll post
Yeah.
those on the show notes, and
Yeah.
you're also on Instagram
Yep. Just
at Blue
hit me
Benadum.
up, send me a message, and yeah, we'll chat.
That's awesome. You're also building houses still, huh?
Yeah, man. I just jumped back into
Incredible.
that. Yeah, it's that's a whole nother workout.
What do you think the next thing is?
I don't know, man. It's like I want to go back into jujitsu. I'm definitely back into CrossFit already. Let's just. I guess I'm gonna see
Where
how I can put it all together.
where are you doing CrossFit now?
Right now, out of my garage. So,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but are you at Precision or where do you go?
I've been to Precision a bunch.
Okay,
I like Mike Tremello down there. I go with Mike a lot and down in Malibu,
okay,
but I have a gym here at my garage. You should come up and work out sometime.
I'm there. Say
I'm
when.
working with RPM. RPM just gave me a whole bunch of new equipment,
Sick.
and I can do. It's great because I can do a class through Pat Barber. Do you know who Pat Barber is?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Pat's their head coach at Adam,
Nice.
and I can just like go out into my garage, turn it on, and have a class with Pat.
That's awesome.
It is
Amazing.
awesome because I will never warm up myself.
Yeah, you just go
I
right
will
in.
never. I go straight
Pull a
in, and
hamstring. Yeah.
then I regret it for the rest of my life. But this way, it's like, all right,
Yeah.
I'll do
Okay,
it.
I'll warm up. Yeah.
And I love Pat. I've surfed with him a couple times. He likes to take me to places where I almost die,
Yeah.
and
Sounds like
he's
my
just
dad.
yeah, he's a great dude. So
Love it.
yeah, you'll have to come up and work out with Hunter and I
Let's do
sometime.
it, man. Count me in.
Hunter will always come up with some stupid workout that'll involve sandbags, and I'll
Oh god,
kill myself. But
brutal. Sounds great.
yeah, so I'll probably see you tomorrow, dropping the kids off at
Yeah,
school.
sounds good, man. Thanks for having
Hey,
me.
thanks for doing the episode. I'd love to have you on again sometime,
Yeah,
and really, really, maybe break down listeners' questions about running and form and
yeah.
VO2 max and all that stuff.
Love to.
But I took a little bit away from this. I'm going to go get my VO2 max to kind of figure out how
Where
far
you're
I
at.
can go.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. Listen, I really would have kept you longer. I'm at 6%, and I
All
don't
right,
want it
bro.
to die.
Good
All
talking to
right,
you, man.
I will talk to you
All
later.
right, late.